This is Sean with Voices of Racing, and I'm here with Bob Gates. How you doing, Bob?
Doing great.
So what's been your connection with the racing industry just in general?
Well, I followed it since I was a kid as a fan.
Okay.
And then later on got into the sport, writing as a journalist. I've written for several different racing publications.
What are some of the ones you've written for?
Open Wheel magazine, Speed Sport magazine, Speed Sport when it was a weekly.
Okay.
So.
And then Troy Ruttman. I'm here with Toddy, his daughter. You wrote Troy's book, is that right?
That's correct.
So kind of describe a little bit of the backstory of how you got connected to that and what was that process like?
Well, again, I grew up as a fan of racing and a fan of the history of racing. So you look back through the history of racing, and Troy Ruttman is one of those names that just comes to the top. Of course, he won the Indianapolis 500 in 1952. But beyond that, he was a national sprint car champion. He won a lot of sprint car races, was a specialist on what they called then the high banks, such as Winchester, Salem, Dayton, Ohio. And that's what you had to succeed on back in those days in order to make it to Indianapolis. The car owner felt that if you could drive on those high banks and do well on them and not scare yourself to death, you know, you were probably pretty good for Indianapolis. So Troy was one of those. And again, so I just naturally became interested in him from the historical point of view. I saw him race once when I was a kid, but by the time I really got old enough to understand what was going on at the racetrack, he began to back down on his racing and retiring. But I saw him in Indianapolis in 1961, 62, and 63. And again, just one of those names that just go back to the very history of auto racing and the very foundation of auto racing as we know it today.
All right, so when you worked on his book, how long did the book become?
It took about a year in order to do the book, a lot of research, and that was fairly quick with the book, but I had a lot of help from Toddy, his daughter Toddy Ruttman, as far as photographs and meeting people and making connections, so that really smoothed things up. You know, I even was able to talk to people like Sir Sterling Moss. Troy raced in Europe for one summer. Participated in a few races.
Getting a little louder around here.
Yes, it is.
All right. Well, listen, we're going to get more from you when we do a little bit of over the phone. But I appreciate your time. And we'll hear this at VoicesOfRacing.com. All right.